Getting there. Hang on. Okay. We are live on YouTube, so everybody can, and the world can hear us. I think that's where we will get started. And I'm going to make you, Gilberto, I think I made you a co-host for the purpose of screen sharing. So you can do that.
Yes.
And you're good with that. All right. Thank you. Good
Perfect.
evening, everybody. This is Just Right. My name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder, executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. This is our Renter Town Hall, our first one for the month of May. We have another one on the 18th of May, and we'll let you know the subject of that one down the road. If you've signed up with us this evening, your emails will be put into our database, so you'll be alerted about information relevant to renters and upcoming events and activities. I want to say that if you have any questions or concerns, we will get to them as we go. Please put them in the chat. That's where we're going to look. And let me introduce quickly my staff. I've got Pat Beckham with us. Give a wave, Pat, so they know which one's you. There you go. And then I've got Malek Demir, also on our staff. For those of you who know Dave Mullins, our other staff guy, he's off tonight. He's got little kids, and this is Daddy's night for him. And I have Josh Fisher, who's our newest board member, also joining us, and who is multitasking right now, but will join us later, is the Deputy Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, Frank Demarais, who will jump on a little bit later on. Let me say a couple of words and let my colleague Josh Fisher jump in as well. Tonight we're talking about voting and voter registration. The Renters Alliance is a 501c3, so let's not confuse this with us supporting any party or candidate. We do not. However, we absolutely support the idea of renters participating in the social, political, and economic lives of our communities. And that means getting out there and having your voice heard. And there's no better way to do that than to vote. If we want to support policies like stable rents, a stronger code and renters' rights enforcement, if we want to have stronger resources for renters and better quality housing, the way that happens is by having elected officials who support those policies. And in order to put them in place, you have to vote for them. It also means understanding your candidates and what they stand for. And the Renters Alliance has held a gubernatorial candidates forum, primary candidates forum. We've held a county executive candidates forum. We support none of them or individually or collectively. We just did it for public information and education purposes. And we're likely to do some kind of questionnaire for the dozens of people who are running for county council. But it's on you all to know what they stand for, whether they support the issues that you support or not, and then finally to vote. But my question is, how do we vote these days? It's all so confusing. So, but before we get to Gilberto, Josh, do you want to add anything to that?
Matt, thank you very much. I first wanted to thank everybody for attending tonight. Thanks to Gilberto for joining us tonight. It's great to see you, buddy. Longtime friend of mine. And I also wanted to add, yes, thank you, Matt. I did want to add, it's a democratic value. It's part of the democratic values to vote. It's a way for you all to have a voice and express your voice and your rights as a citizen. And so it's extremely important and valuable to vote in our processes each and every time. That's what I have to say.
And you're right, Josh. Just so people know, the last county executive election was won by 77 votes. As you can see in our national politics, elections have significant consequences. If you're not voting for something, at least vote against something. For God's sakes, vote. All right, with that, it is my honor and pleasure to have our guest this evening, He is an expert in everything having to do with voting. He is with the Montgomery County Board of Elections. He provides public information, and we are delighted to have him and very grateful for his expertise. Dr. Gilberto Zelaya, Gilberto or Gilberto, whichever you prefer. You're on.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. So, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Perfect. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint. Can you see that? Okay, good. So obviously, as our friend Matt said, the process of voting is one of our democratic values. It may not be perfect to all, but it's one of the most perfect processes in which we could participate globally. And once Dr. Martin Luther King said, voting is the foundation stone for political action. So it's extremely important that we attest to that. Now, obviously, there's been some changes in the current election cycle. Originally, early voting was June 16th through the 23rd, and election day was the 28th of June. With redistricting, that has changed. So now, early voting will take place the 7th through the 14th of July, and election day was moved to Tuesday, the 19th of July. In Montgomery County and in Maryland, you have three options to exercise your constitutional right to vote, either by mail, during 8 consecutive days of early voting from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., or your last opportunity will be on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And keep in mind, you are tied to your particular voting election day precinct which is based on your residential address, but we'll get into that. So the first thing is, in order to participate in the franchise, you must be registered to vote. I will assume that I'm preaching to the choir here, but you must be registered to vote to participate. At any time you could register, we developed an easy texting prompt. You could text the word vote to 77788. The word is vote to 77788. And the system will kick back the Maryland State Board of Elections online voter registration. So you could submit your information. Now, you must have a Maryland driver's license, permit, or ID in order to leverage this opportunity, this capability of using the texting prompt. But then there's also other ways in which you could register to vote. You can visit us on our website at 777vote.org, or at the State Board of Elections website. You could Google that because they have a long email, a long hyperlink, a long address. And you could download the voter registration applications from the corresponding websites. At any time, you could call us at the office at 240-777-8532. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. So now what's critical is that you must update your voter registration if there's a need to do so. That includes your name change. Maybe you got married, maybe you got divorced. Your party affiliation change. Remember, Maryland has a closed primary system. So if there's a particular candidate that you want to support with your vote, and that candidate is either registered as a Democrat or a Republican, you must be registered in that party in order to flex your right to vote for that individual. Now, if you're an unaffiliated, independent, part of the Whig Party, Socialist, all of the above, you could still vote, but you will vote for school board. It was a nonpartisan contest. And if you move, maybe you've downsized, your kids are off to college, you're an empty nester, you got you move from a home to an apartment, or maybe now you're going to have triplets, and now you have to move from the apartment to a home. You need to make sure that your residential address is updated with the Board of Elections, because that residential address is where we will mail your sample ballot, where you will receive any correspondence from the Board of Elections, and where you will receive and we will know what corresponding ballot style to give you on election day or during early voting. This could be done by texting the word check to 77788. Text the word check to 77788. And so once I said, again, your name change, address change, party affiliation change. And why is it so important? It ensures that your voter registration record is up to date. And please, it's your responsibility. We won't get this information through osmosis. One of the urban myths is when you move, you go to the post office and you have your coupons and your Trader Joe magazine and whatever you want to receive forwarded to your new residential address. Anything from the Montgomery County Board of Elections will come back to our office. They will not forward that to your new residential address. And it also determines where you will vote on election day. I alluded to that earlier. It's very important because if on election day you decide to show up and vote in person and you're in the wrong precinct, especially with redistricting, you will need to vote a provisional ballot. At no time can any poll worker turn you away, but if you are in the wrong precinct, or maybe we don't have the corresponding ballot style, you must vote a provisional ballot. So by all means, make sure you know where you're going to vote if you're going to vote on election day. And once again, you know, the Maryland primaries are closed, so you must be a registered Democrat or Republican if there's a particular candidate that's running for a partisan contest, a partisan a ballot. And this is kind of the breakdown of the county. We have about close to 670,000 registered voters. About 60% of those are Democrats, 15% are Republicans, and there's a mixed bag of other green, libertarian, working class party, and it constitutes about 25% or a fourth of our voters are unaffiliated. So by all means, don't shoot yourself in the foot. If there's a candidate, make sure you affiliate, and at any time after the primary, you could go back to one of the parties listed. Now, after you know, updating your voter registration, one of the aspects and one of the franchise you have is voting early. This mitigates the need to wait on in long lines during early election day. We will have in Montgomery County 14 approved early voting sites. In 2020, there were 11. We have expanded. These are the ones listed: Bower Park Activity Center, Bower Drive Community Rec Center, the Damascus Community Rec Center, Germantown Community Rec Center, Lawton Community Rec, Praisner Community Rec, Mid-County Community Rec, the Montgomery County Executive Office Building, the Nancy Dasik North Potomac Community Rec Center, the Potomac Community Rec Center, the Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department, the Wheaton Community Rec Center, and the White Oak Community Center. Really quick, don't worry about taking notes. I will share the PowerPoint with Matt and Josh, and they'll email it to you, so don't worry about taking notes. So you have 14 early voting locations from July 7th through the 14th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., 8 consecutive days, including Saturday and Sunday. Now, if early voting is not your cup of tea, or because you're going to be out of town, because we've moved, well, we didn't move the elections, but individuals moved the elections to July, and you may be on a honeymoon to Aruba, or you're not going to be available to vote in person, you could vote by mail. It's a legitimate, it's safe, it's secure, no mask required. You know, but at the end of the day, it's a viable way to exercise your constitutional right. All you need to do is get your cell phone, text the letters VBM for vote by mail, VBM to 77788, and you can submit your application today. Do not procrastinate, because it's easier for our staff to process hundreds and hundreds of vote by mail requests to receive your ballot over the next couple of weeks, as opposed to at the last minute, you're submitting your application a couple of days before early voting. So by all means, support our staff by submitting your request today. Now, early voting, we've been doing this. This is not new for Montgomery County or the United States. We've been voting by mail or absentee since the Civil War. So this is nothing new. It's been going on longer than I've been here on Earth. So it's hundreds of years. So it's a legitimate way of voting. President Lincoln instituted that because he wanted to ensure that the military got a chance to exercise their constitutional right because they were fighting for our nation. And this is kind of an affidavit that the soldiers would provide to the master postman, and that's how they would submit their vote by mail absentee ballot. So it's a legitimate way of exercising your right. This is the application. We're going to look really quickly and focus on this part that says you could either select to vote in the primaries or the general only, or both, or you could join the permanent or active vote by mail list. What will occur on number 4, I would like to receive a mail-in ballot for all future federal and state elections. You will still need to affirm that you will continuously want to receive your voting ballot for every consecutive. We will mail you a confirmation card after and before each election. As of now, we have about 75,000 mail-in ballot requests, and about 3/4 of those requested to be on the permanent list or the permanent active list, which is good. And then now we're going to look at this portion of the vote by mail application. There's different options in B and C. Number 1 is email a link to print my ballot or fax my ballot. And we're going to talk about this. So now emailed or fax ballots were created to facilitate military or Americans living overseas, expats, in countries with poor postal infrastructure. This is not a convenience. I want to vote on my phone. I don't have the time. Because what happens is if you request to vote, if you want your ballot to be emailed or faxed, then it adds an administrative strain to the Montgomery County Board of Elections or your other local boards of elections. The State Board of Elections will email you a login and a password. You will log into that system. It's encrypted. It's secure. You will download your ballot. You will fill out your ballot, and then you will print your ballot, or you will receive your ballot via fax. But keep in mind that when you print your ballot, you are printing your ballot on your own printer or on your fax machine. You will need to provide your paper and toner. And then also you will need to provide your own envelope. And also you will need to pay for postage, okay? And there's issues around postage and are we gonna get it, etc. But it's important that to note, once you mail us back your emailed or your fax ballot, we cannot scan that ballot on our high velocity printer, our high velocity scanners. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have bipartisan staff members, one Democrat or Republican and one Democrat or unaffiliated, and they will need to duplicate your web delivery or your ballot emailed or faxed to you because it's not going to work with our scanners. That takes a lot of administrative time to do so. So the web delivery or by fax is really for our military overseas. It's not a convenience factor because you don't want to bother to wait to receive your official ballot, and you just rather print it like you do your airline tickets or your concert tickets. It doesn't work like that. But of course, I'm not telling you not to do it, but it just adds additional strain to the staff. The good thing about getting the official ballot, it's on card stock. It's unique to the Board of Elections and to our scanning equipment, but also the U.S. postage is paid. We pay for a permit. So you don't have to pay postage when you return that vote by mail ballot. And in 2020, there was a lot of nightmares and fears around the Postal Service that these blue bins were disappearing, they were being stolen or whatnot. But keep in mind, we pretty much ran a miniature post office because we got ballot drop boxes. We were going to have about 53 ballot drop boxes installed at different times throughout the county. Our goal is to have all 53 ballot drop boxes installed before early voting. And so this texting prompt is not active as of yet because we don't have any ballot drop boxes installed. And all you need to do is text the word box and your zip code, and it's going to give you the closest ballot drop box and also the post office locator, because the post office is still a legitimate option for you to return your ballot back to the Board of Elections. Additionally, we developed an app that was very popular. Right now, we are updating and enhancing that app. It gives you all the information, everything that we're talking about on your phone. It's a great way, it's a great tool. It mitigates calls to the office, and it has a lot of great information, driving directions, wait times, etc. Now, one of the reasons why, if you're curious why we implement Spanish in the election process, we're under Section 203 of the 1975 Voting Rights Act. I am the administrator that was hired to implement this. So your ballots, forms, signage are in English and in Spanish. It's a requirement established by the Department of Justice after the 2000 census. And in 2010 and in 2020, we got the consent decree that we need to implement Spanish throughout the process for the next decade. And so we do a lot of outreach. We go into the community and we work with individuals to inform them and educate them about the franchise. There's this kind of urban myth that in order to become a naturalized citizen, you need to read, write, and speak English. You don't necessarily. But in addition to Section 203, we need bilingual judges in every single precinct, even if it's Poolsville or Barnesville or Damascus. We need in every single precinct bilingual Spanish-speaking judges. Now, back to the civics requirement, there is an exception for those individuals to become a naturalized citizen. If you are 50 years of age and you've been living in the U.S. for 20 years as a legal resident or quote unquote green card holder, but not necessarily continuous, or you're 55 years of age and you've been living in the U.S. For 15 years as a U.S. Resident, you could bypass the English requirement in the interview process. You could do it in Spanish like my grandmother did, Swahili, Amharic, what have you. But also, we also recognize that in order to do outreach in the community, not just in the Spanish-speaking community, that forms like the voter registration and the vote by mail application need to be in Spanish because of Section 203. However, I'm proud to announce that we pushed the State Board of Elections and we got them to translate these documents, not only in English and obviously in Spanish, but in simplified and traditional Chinese, Korean, and in French. Our next goal is to get Amharic and other languages translating to the documents. It's taken me 19 years to do so. But Montgomery County is very diverse, but what's happening now is a lot of Montgomery County residents are being pushed out of the county. You guys are the Renters Alliance, and as you know, it's rent is high as it is, and so is home ownership. And so individuals will tend to move out of the county. And so it's vital that the different counties or neighboring counties also provide the same type of outreach to their voters. Once I joined the Board of Elections, one of the things I saw was a missed opportunity to educate and work with our youth. I created the Future Vote program. This is going to be our 19th year. Actually, these are my children. Sebastian in the back, now he's going to be 16 in the middle of May. And the youngest one, Julian, he's right now 13. And they're going to be Future Vote ambassadors. And my son, Sebastian, is going to serve as a poll worker for the first time once he turns of age. And I've worked with over 45,000 students, and what these students do is they help serve as election day aides for our adult poll workers. They set up the equipment, they put all the fancy blue painter's tape on the floor with the arrows, they put the posters and the signage, the posters and the tables. But they do not touch any of the ballots, they do not touch any of the equipment, including the ballot marking device, the scanners, or the poll books. They just work with all the auxiliary things to help our adult judges focus on serving our voters. And they also give out the infamous I voted sticker that voters get once they're done voting. We've worked with over 27,500 families. I conduct a training that's mandatory, not only to the Future Vote ambassador, they may be from grade 6 to 12, but also for their family. I welcome them to come to the training, and just like we're touching about these things right now, I talk to them about the franchise. And the goal is if you educate one, you prepare one. And so it gives the opportunity to educate them. And we also mitigate calls at the office. We visit all the public and private high schools in Montgomery County. We've registered over 25,000 high school students to vote, to register them. And also what's critical is we actually recruit a lot of these students from the Future Vote program, like my son, once they reach of age, to serve as poll workers. Interesting fact, Montgomery County has one of the youngest poll worker force, if not the youngest in America. The average age of poll workers is 65 and a half. Montgomery County's poll workers, our average age is about 48, 49 years of age because we incorporate a lot of our high school students and we've been able to lower the age of our poll workers. But talking about poll workers, we are in desperate need of poll workers. You guys are a civic-minded bunch. We may have a couple of seasoned poll workers, but I implore you, we need you. I'm being extremely forthcoming and honest. We're having a difficult time identifying individuals because it is the summer. I will be honest, we're not paying $1,000 an hour. It's not glamorous work, but it's needed, it's necessary. There is an online training that you will do, an online quiz, and the in-person training is about 2 hours. So I really implore you for you to participate as a poll worker. To apply, you would text the word SERVE to 77788. And then once you register, we will confirm that you are a registered voter. And then we will assign you one of our poll worker recruiters, and they will coordinate all aspects of training and service. We need bilingual poll workers. We work with the student poll workers. And if you have a child, grandchild, neighbor, your own children, they can earn up to 25 student service learning hours serving as a poll worker. To graduate, they need 75. And part of the poll worker process, number one, after you apply, you must take an online quiz. After you take that online quiz, you must take a virtual component of training, which is about an hour and a half, give and take. And after you do the online component, then you will schedule your in-person training. And I could tell you right now, this week we had to cancel 4 in-person trainings because no one had signed up. But we have hundreds and hundreds of poll workers that are ready to train, but we call them, we email them, we beg them. So if you're one of those individuals who is scheduled to do your training, please do it as soon as possible. And at the end of the day, it's your voice and it's your vote, and we're here to serve. So we need for you to do your part. Make sure you're registered, make sure your information is up to date, make sure you make a vote plan, whether by mail, in person, during early voting, or on election day, and just follow through. And at the end of the day, once again, we are here to serve.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow. All right. Malek, did you spot anything in the chat we need to address?
Well, so I will say one thing, Doctor, is that I did everything you were recommending as far as texting to 77788, and it all worked beautifully. And I'm very impressed. Everybody needs to know if they are making a change to their party affiliation or address, they will need their driver's license. So just have that handy. But everything was perfect. I think the only other question we had is it had to do with the Electoral College, if that impacts local voting.
No. So for the midterm elections, we do not leverage the Electoral College. It's a popular vote. It would be nice if for the presidential we could leverage the popular vote, but I'm not. If I was king for a day, that's the first thing that's the first thing I would get rid of. But unfortunately, that's what we have. But for the midterm, no.
Great. That was the only question I think we had. It's a beautiful system. I'm like, can you get into, I don't know, local politics or presidential race or something?
Well, one of the things I could tell you is also, which I forgot to add as a slide, is we have something called same-day voter registration. So the voter registration, if you were living under a rock and you're not registered and you live in Montgomery County, as long as you go to an early voting center, one of the 14 early voting centers over 8 days, take your driver's license, a permit, take your rental agreement, your gas bill, a bank statement with your name and your current Montgomery County address, then the poll workers will register you and you will be able to vote. Once again, you could change your name and you could update your address during early voting and election day. You cannot update your party affiliation during early voting on election day. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. I think that keeps maybe some individuals from voting. But at the end of the day, if voters put the same amount of effort for Black Friday shopping or Cyber Monday, I think they would be extremely well-versed and prepared to make a vote plan. So once again, and also I implore you, I think right now we have, how many people do we have? Like 40, 50 people?
50,
we have 53 people. Those 53 people, if you cannot commit to serve as a poll worker, find me somebody, okay? This is the reason. If we don't have a robust team in each precinct or early voting center, and you decide to vote in person, do not call me upset that there's a long line. If we're limited by the number of poll workers, one poll worker cannot manage or run 3 check-in poll books. We're limited to the number of people in a polling place, in a polling room. So in order for us, for example, like a Silver Spring Civic Building during early voting, we would have about 15 to 18 or even 12 check-in tables. But if we only have 20 judges, we need judges for the scanners, we need judges for the poll, to check in, we need judges to man and staff the electronic poll books, the greeter at the front door, provisional ballot judge. And if we only have 3 to 5 check-in judges, I'm telling you right now, you're going to wait in line and you're going to get upset. And so I need your assistance and your support by identifying at minimum 1 to 2 individuals that could serve as a poll worker if you're deciding to vote in person. However, we have voting by mail. It's easy, it's secure, and I encourage you to leverage that if you're not going to be in town to vote in person.
Terrific. We will, as the Renters Alliance, we have a very large multi-thousand person database, and we will take from this a PowerPoint, and maybe if you have a single slide or advertisement that we can put in our newsletter, we will certainly send it out and recruit as many as we can from the renter community, not only to vote, but also to participate as volunteers, staffing these polling places. A couple of questions, one that came to me, and maybe you mentioned this and I didn't hear it, but what are the deadlines for registering to vote in the primary and so on? Do we have dates? Because we know that the votes, the primaries themselves have changed and the deadlines change.
Yes. So the voter registration party affiliation deadline is June 28th. Okay, so it's important that you do that. If you're new to the county, the same day registration, you can leverage that during early voting and election day. So it's critical that you get that, out of the way and you update your registration and you register to vote. What I will do is I will email you different banners that you could just cut and paste into your newsletter, and I'll send you all the corresponding links as well. Right now, we're developing our sample ballot, so make sure your residential address is up to date because in about 6 weeks, we will mail you the corresponding sample ballot. It has everything that we talked about tonight and more information. So it's important that your information is up to date so you will receive any type of correspondence. And also, we're planning right now to mail every single registered voter a confirmation letter, giving information about early voting election day, but also if with the redistricting, if your voting precinct has changed, or if your precinct, election day precinct was changed because of construction or there's a new school, or maybe we find a facility that's closer to the particular voting district. So everyone's going to get a confirmation letter from us in a couple of weeks. And in addition, then you'll get the sample ballot.
I know this is, I should know this, and I think I do. Gilberto, you weigh in if you know more. I believe that a bill was passed in the legislature that permits campaigns and people doing voter registration to distribute literature in multifamily apartment buildings in the same way as candidates can go door to door with individual families. I believe that law was passed last session by Delegate Jimmy Tarlow, who's not in the delegation now. But do you know about this, Gilberto?
I'll be honest with you, no. To be honest, no. So the one thing so here's interesting. So a lot of times election laws are developed by the parties, right? They're not necessarily developed by us, the individuals that have to do the work, right? We're the ones with boots on the ground. That in particular, I'm going to apologize. I haven't even heard. We're so focused on getting the confirmation mailing and the sample ballot, and because that doesn't directly affect us, it really affects candidates. At the end of the day, I apologize for not being first on that aspect of the legislation.
Well, I know we felt strongly about it because there are some landlords who were allowing some parties and not other parties to distribute literature in their buildings. And also because, as one of the reasons why the Renters Alliance came together was to give renters an organized voice in public affairs, and obviously to encourage renter participation. And if renters cannot have campaign literature and voter registration literature distributed to them in the same way that homeowners can, they're disenfranchised to a degree. Even though, as I remind renters all the time, you do have the right to distribute literature amongst yourselves about issues relevant to renters, as long as the source of that information is clear in that communication. That includes organizing tenants associations and so on. And those of you who have tenants associations, as long as they're not a 501c3, and hopefully it's just an organization of committed community residents, you can host any candidate you want. You can invite them to your building to hear their views. You can invite Dr. Zelaya to your apartment building to talk about voter registration and information. So there's a lot of freedom there, but I'll get back. I will put in the next newsletter, Malek and Pat, remind me of this, the next newsletter, what the law is regarding campaign distribution in multifamily households. But I believe that there was a law, I know that was proposed, I know we testified for it, and I can't recall whether it passed, but I believe that it did. But I'll get that for sure.
And that's good. And just in case there's any your representatives from specific HOA, if you would like for me to do a similar virtual town hall with your corresponding homeowners association, by all means reach out and we'll definitely set that up and do it.
Now, there's a specific question in the chat about who we're voting for in this primary. Can you tell us the categories of candidates?
So there's a lot. I mean, between the governor, the governorship, obviously the state house is up for grabs. You have the different council members. There's the councilmatic districts. There's an expansion to 11 seats on the new council, county executive. The one thing that will be interesting about the sample ballot is going to give you all of the different contests. Another good resource, because the Montgomery County Board of Elections, we don't get into the nooks and cranny with the candidates and their position. We have to maintain neutral, nonpartisan. The League of Women Voters, I would recommend putting that also in your newsletter. They have their voters guide, and what each candidate does for each contest, there's a standardized question that they submit, and then you can see kind of their positions on different topics affecting county residents. So that's a great resource. And also, I think it's called 411.org that you could add to your newsletters. And they could also mail you the voter's guide that will get into each candidate in each contest. And also the different delegations and the different legislative districts at the state level. So there's a multitude of different contests. Our sample ballot, once again, will reach out about 6 to 7 weeks. And then you'll have the voters guides, and I think you should leverage those to get a better feel of the different candidates that are running for the different contests. But I think what's important, a good takeaway, not necessarily the different contests, is the fact that Maryland has closed primaries. So if you happen to be one of the fourth of our voters in Montgomery County that's unaffiliated, don't be surprised if you get an unaffiliated ballot and you don't get to vote for either for the governors or a candidate, right? Or you can't vote for a specific county council because you're limited to the school board. So make sure you affiliate, and you could always go back to unaffiliated after the primary elections. You're not breaking any rules or any laws. You have the right to do that.
So let me just, because I require very simple explanations of things. This is the primary election, and the primary is for the parties in general to come up with who their candidates are going to be. So I think there's 3 parties, if I'm not mistaken: Green, Democrat, Republican, and maybe you said the Whigs. Are they still around? Who else, Gilberto? What are the parties?
So there's a working class party, libertarian, unaffiliated, and then the independent. Now there's a lot of other parties. So when you register to vote, you could select other and put the Whig party. We do have people registered as Whig. We have a handful of them. But at the end of the day, the 2 major parties are the Democratic Party, the Democrats and the Republicans. And a lot of times people feel slighted if they are registered Republicans, because a lot of times they feel that they don't have a voice. But you do have a voice. And I tell voters, look, it's just the way the landscape is in Montgomery County. If you talk to our counterparts in Washington County or Kent County, it's different. They have a majority Republican base and a smaller Democratic base. You got to remember the current governor is Republican, and he was a two-term Republican. So remember, Montgomery County doesn't have the last say as it pertains to the electorate when it comes to specific contests like governor, lieutenant governor, et cetera. But it's important that, like you said, Matt, Maryland has a closed primary. The parties select their candidates for the general election. And if you want to have a say on a particular candidate that lines with your views and your needs, especially for the Renters Alliance, you need to make sure that you are registered under that candidate's party.
Right. So the primary for those candidates who will represent their parties, you have to register by June 28th, and the vote is July 18th for the party's candidates, whatever party you select. And then you'll have an opportunity to vote for the candidates who are designated for that party. There are multiple candidates for the Democratic Party. There might be fewer, but there are multiple candidates for the Republican Party, and I don't know the rest of them. By the way, does the Montgomery County Board of Elections have a primary party information booklet of any kind, a voter guide?
Yeah, no, we don't have a party primary guide. What we have is a sample ballot. I also welcome you guys to follow us on social media, because every day I'm posting something, tidbits that are relevant about closed primaries, registering to vote by mail. So it's good that you also follow us on social media. We don't have something specific as it pertains to the party primary, but we will be mailing out every single voter their corresponding ballot, the sample ballot. And what that includes is if you're a registered Republican or Democrat, you will get your particular ballot styles. We will have 777 different ballot styles. Each style is different because, for example, I live in Clarksburg, so my District 39, my legislative District 39 will be different than someone living in Tacoma Park. So my ballot style, because of that particular contest, is going to differ. So if you have the different combination from legislative district, congressional district, councilmatic district, school board, et cetera, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle, all of those combinations, we have 777 unique ballots. So depending on your party, whether you're the Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated, your particular ballot style will correspond to the combinations of the different contests. And when I say contests, like I said, governor, lieutenant governor, council member, school board, et cetera, central committee, and also so it's important that you affiliate if you wish, if you desire. If you desire to stay unaffiliated, independent, that's fine, but do not get upset with our poll workers when you get one contest for school board, okay? And do not throw the word disenfranchisement, because if you're registered independent, get your cell phone, text the word check to 77788 and check to see what's your affiliation. Check that your residential address is correct. Check that your name is spelled correctly. Check that your date of birth is correct. One thing also I want to share, if you're registering for the first time and you mailed your voter registration, the poll worker may request that you present your ID. However, if you voted in the past, and if you checked in the past, they will not request for you to present an ID. Full disclosure, we do not make the rules, we follow them. So if you have any issues and you just come out and you provide your driver's license to the poll worker, and the poll worker says, no, I don't need it because I'm going with what the poll book says. The poll book will say ID required. The judge will say, Mr. Smith, Ms. Sanchez, I need an ID to verify your registration. But if the poll worker does not request an ID, do not yell at them, do not get upset with them. They're just following the rules, and you need to contact your elected official if you're not happy. And I understand that in order to buy certain types of medication and to buy cigarettes and alcohol, you need a driver's license or an ID. I understand that. But in Maryland, unless the poll worker requests an ID, present it. If not, you will need to vote provisionally.
So the other question then is, can someone who has registered to vote, can they check to see if, can they look to see if their registration is on file? Is there a way to go online and check your registration?
Yeah, just, you could do it right now. You could just text the word check to 77788 or go onto the Montgomery County Board of Elections website at 777vote.org. Go to, here, let me do this. Let me share again the screen. I'll go online. I can show you right now. Can you see? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we're looking at it.
Okay, good. So you go to 777vote.org and then go to voter registration and verify your registration. And all you need to put is your information right here.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm not sure we see that exactly, but we'll put it in the chat, and that's what people will do. But there is a way to check if you are in fact registered. If you just recently registered and want to verify it, you can go online and do that, or do check. Say again, Gilberto. Check what?
You can text the word check, CHECK, check to 77788.
Got it. Another question: can you change your party affiliation before the 28th?
Yes, you could do it tonight. Once you check your voter registration and you notice that you're unaffiliated or you want to change your party to whichever party you desire, you could do so tonight. And then what's going to happen is our staff will get that request, that digital request. We will verify against your voter registration record, and then we will mail you a voter registration notification with the updated information. Just make sure you check it, that there's no typos or misspellings, etc. And then you're good to go. And then anytime after the primary, you could go back to whatever party your heart desires.
Okay, and now let's say that you are registered to vote, but you have not affiliated with a party. I'm assuming that you cannot vote in the primary election. Is that correct? Except for a school board?
To vote. Yeah, everyone gets to vote, but if you're unaffiliated or any of the alternate parties other than Democrat or Republican, you will get the school board ballot.
That's the only thing you can vote for.
That's the only thing you will vote for. And like I said, a fourth of our registered voters are unaffiliated. They're not affiliated with the Democratic or the Republican Party. So that's a lot of individuals. So make sure that, like I said, if there's a candidate you want to support with your votes, like you mentioned, the county executive race was called by 77 votes. By all means, change your affiliation and you could go back to unaffiliated if that's what you desire. But you have to do that by the 28th of June.
Very good. By the 28th of June, this is the primary election. But just for folks who are not interested in the primary election, assume that when is the last day to register for the election, which is in November?
Oh, you got me, surprised me there. It's 21 days before. So whatever that date is, I can't think beyond tomorrow. I'm not even thinking about
we're trying to find out what you don't know, Gilberto. Maybe we finally got you.
I don't know. I don't know anything past the 19th of July. Not even my birthday.
Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming that if you haven't registered to vote, there'll be plenty of opportunity to register to vote for the actual election, which is in November, after the 28th of June.
Yes, and even if you're not registered to vote and you missed the June 28th voter registration primary deadline, right? You could go to any of the early voting centers, the 14 centers, or an election day precinct. Bring your ID, a phone bill, utility bill with your name and current Montgomery County address. You could register to vote and leverage the same-day voter registration, and then you could actually vote that day. But what's important is if you are already registered, you could update your name, you could change your address in person during early voting and on election day. You cannot update your party affiliation. You will need to vote a provisional ballot. What's going to happen is, so here's a scenario. I'm unaffiliated, I show up, I swear that I'm a Democrat or a Republican. The poll worker looks at your record and says, no, it says here you're unaffiliated. You will need to vote a provisional ballot. The judge will give you a party ballot. say Democrat or Republican. You will fill it out. You will fill out a provisional ballot application in an envelope. You will put that ballot into that envelope. You will not scan it, because then we have to research, why is this individual who is registered unaffiliated wanting to vote a party ballot? Once we do our investigation and we look at your record and signatures and when you registered and all of the transactions you've had with us over the X amount of years, we will determine that this person is truly unaffiliated. This person didn't update their voter registration. And then what we're going to do is we will duplicate that ballot, that party ballot, to a non-affiliated ballot, because that's the party that that individual is registered. We will duplicate just the school board ballot. We will accept in parts. We will scan it, but then that envelope, that application will update the party for that voter, but for the general election, not the primary election. And I know what I said, I probably confused a bunch of people. All I need for you to do is, if you're unaffiliated, pick a party if you want to vote a party primary. If you don't care about any of the candidates for the primary, you're good to go. You'll vote for school board. You'll show up to vote in person, and you're good to go. If you vote by mail and you don't update your party and you get an unaffiliated ballot, or maybe you get a Republican ballot and you want to be Democrat or vice versa, the ballot is going to reflect the latest and the greatest information we have on your record. We're not going to go with what you desire to vote. We just go by the database. So make sure that your information is up to date. So tonight you have homework. Text the word check to 77788. Check your registration, make sure everything is current. So that way, if you vote in person, you're not going to have long delays. If you vote at home by mail, you're not going to have a coronary, because you're going to get a different ballot that you assume you should get. So do your part, and we will serve and we'll help you on the other end.
Terrific. And getting to one of our last questions now, do you know what we get to vote for in terms of council? There's 4 at large in 1 district. Do you know what the ballot looks like?
No, actually we haven't. We're waiting to get the ballots from the state, which is interesting. We have to check for spelling, any errors, if candidates are in the wrong contest. And we literally have to check in bilingual, English and Spanish. So we're going to have to check, which is interesting. People don't understand that concept. We're going to check literally over 1,554 ballots, because we have to do it 777 in English and 777 different ballot styles in Spanish. And we need to make sure they're all lined up. So we're waiting. Hopefully by next week, we're going to get the ballots so we could check to make sure that it's correct before we go to print and before we put the screenshots on the sample ballot. So we will do our part. I just need for you guys to check your voter registration to make sure everything is current and up to date, especially as it pertains to your party. Like I said, whether you got married or divorced, you downsized, you got a bigger home, we personally do not care the scenarios of the situations that made your personal life change. But we do need to know your name, your address, date of birth, and your party affiliation if you desire to have one.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Zelaya, you can share screen. There you go. Unshare screen at will. I want to thank you very much. I want to emphasize something that was said in the chat. The Renters Alliance position is that you should vote every opportunity you get. We obviously will not tell you what party or candidate, but we will tell you to vote. That includes the primary. As someone said, everything is local, and the primary has a lot to do with who the candidates will be. And so don't wait, participate in everything. We will put out the information that Dr. Zelaya has given us from the County Board of Elections. We will keep advertising it repeatedly. If you have any questions, the contact information, I believe, was in the chat as well. Is that correct? We did that, right? And you can always email the Renters Alliance at info@rentersalliance.org. info@rentersalliance.org. Put it in, rentersalliance.org for any kinds of questions. And we will forward it to the right person or answer it for you directly. So let me just say thank you again, Dr. Zelaya. It's terrific to have you. Great to have someone who's as knowledgeable as you are, with honor and integrity, as we have no doubt you have, with our County Board of Elections. And we know that that is probably more widespread than some of the critics have said. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm here. At the end of the day, I'm here to serve. This life has afforded me the opportunity to provide for my family, and we're a small family, but I do have a larger family, which is the 670,000 voters, and so I'm here to serve at the end of the day.
Terrific. Thank you very much for coming. All right.
My pleasure.
Frank Desmarais, are you with us?
Yes,
There he
sir.
is. Multitasking, as we might expect from our senior county officials. This is Frank Desmarais, the Deputy Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. As we know, there are a number of issues affecting tenants, from those struggling to pay their rent, some who have complaints about their living conditions, questions about their rights, questions about how to enforce code. And also, we are nearing the end of the COVID emergency rent cap. So Deputy Director Desmarais, do you want to lead us on?
Sure. Thank you for Gilberto for very inspiring messages. So I'll just carry those forward myself personally. And to everyone that's participating this evening, thank you for attending and everything you hear tonight, both what you just heard, and we'll share some more. We always ask you to share as broadly as you can in your community. We have 130,000 rental units in the county. We have a lot of challenges reaching folks. Matt touched on a couple of key things going on in the current environment. Let me stay focused on the last thing he mentioned, which is that the county currently has rent limits. Those rent limits are associated with any notice of rent increase that's given before May 15, 2022. So we have another 2 weeks that any rent notice that is sent out is limited to the current index we call the voluntary rent guideline, which is 0.4%. Any rent increase notice that's sent out at any time has to include the dollar amount of the new proposed rent, the percentage increase from the previous rent, and needs to reference the voluntary rent guideline. For the last 2 years, since April of 2020, the council and the county implemented a maximum increase of rent notices equal to whatever the voluntary rent guideline was at that time. In February of 2022, the index for the prior calendar year was released at 0.4. So short answer, if you receive a rent increase notice until May 15, 2022, it cannot include a rent increase greater than 0.4. On May 16, which is a Monday, any rent increase notice after that date does not have any cap. Okay, the Montgomery County at large, other than the city of Tacoma Park, will have no rent increase maximum. And so it's a private arrangement between the landlord and the tenant as to the rent. The landlord must provide 90 days notice. So this law had to do with notices. So if a notice is mailed out the second half of May for 90 days forward, which would likely be September 1 rent, there is no maximum rent increase with that. The other element of the law that was passed in November of 21 that set this maximum rent increase is, through May 15 also included a provision that expires May 15. That's a provision that allows any tenant who has experienced COVID-related income loss and whose gross household income of all adults in the household is at or below a certain low income table, they can file the notice, a notice that's available at our website, or the landlord can give to the tenant if they attempt to collect late fees. A landlord has to waive any charged but uncollected late fees that have accrued during the COVID period, since the declaration of the COVID emergency in March of 2020 through May 15 of 2022. The landlord must waive those late fees. This is only done if the landlord receives this late fee waiver notice from the tenant by May 15. So if you have a rent ledger that has late fees associated, the county has this form available to you at our website. I'll have the link in there. You can go to the Montgomery County MD.gov, the main county website, Montgomery County MD.gov. If you put /renter, which is the right word facing slash and the word renter, you'll get to the COVID related renter information. You can also go through the Renters Alliance. But if you file that form with your landlord before May 15, they must waive any outstanding late fees that have been assigned to your account. So let me pause there, Matt, if you want to add anything.
No, just I did put the link in the chat, Montgomery County MD .gov/renter. It's renter, not renters. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah.
Renter. Okay. And that page has a lot of information and resources. We at the Renters Alliance are trying to track some of these violations. We have seen renewal notices that are not in compliance with this law, and sometimes not in compliance with other requirements in a renewal notice. Some of those requirements include being offered a 2-year lease in your renewal. If you receive a renewal notice within the time frame that we put down for this 0.4%, which I believe is after February 5th and before May 15th, and it includes a 2-year lease offering, the increase for both years, each year, I should say, is 0.4%. So if you intend to be in your apartment for any length of time, take the 2-year lease offering, because we do not know what the increases are going to look like after May 15th. We do know that national and regional reporting on real estate values and rent increases is pointing towards significant spikes in rent, anywhere between 10 and 30% in some regions of the country. And so we're very concerned about this, and we are urging you, if you have the opportunity, to take advantage of this emergency rent stabilization measure in order to keep people stable in their homes. The pandemic should not be, we're working very hard to keep it from destabilizing renter families.
Okay, and I'm just going to clarify, I misspoke. And I just added, it is renters with an S. So I just added that to the chat, Montgomery County MD.gov /RENTERS. The second thing I want to touch on is that the county during the COVID period and looking forward, we know that people need support, need information. Not everybody can get to these calls, or these are only limited amounts of information on these town halls. We have support organizations in addition to Renters Alliance. So at that same website, there are tenant support organizations that can support understanding your rights, understanding the resources available, the support that's available, and particularly for those that are receiving notices related to court action, to eviction action. There's connection there to the free legal assistance, the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau, and to Homeless Persons Representation Project, HPRP. You don't have to be homeless, but those organizations are working with the county, supporting tenants to understand the notices they get, the actions being taken in court, their rights and things that they can do to protect themselves, also to work with their landlords. So there's a range of actions that a landlord will take, can take, for failure to pay rent. If you're late on your rent, they can sue you for eviction. If they give you notice to that they are terminating your lease at the end of the lease and they give you 60 days notice, they have rights to sue you for possession of the property. and they call it tenant holding over. But each of these actions requires certain steps, certain notices. So the key message here is you are not alone. The county resources include these organizations and include the resources of the county. And I work for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We have the Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, which supports tenants to understand their rights. I'd added to the chat the link to the Landlord Tenant Handbook. There were a few questions that came in the Q&A. They added that as well. The Landlord Tenant Handbook spells out for the tenant and the landlord all of the county requirements that provide protections. Any tenant or landlord that has an issue that is not being resolved, that they have a question, concern, a belief that their rights and responsibilities are being violated, can file a complaint. So the critical step for someone to get direct support from the county if they believe a violation of county law, county landlord-tenant law has occurred, is to file a complaint at the website with the renters /renters, or just calling the county. You can locate the county complaint process. The main number for calling the county for any issue is 311, which is 240-777-0311, or for most persons in the county, just dialing 311, and you'll get a service representative. If you have a landlord-tenant complaint, they will try and answer some basic questions. They will take a service request. They'll file that, and the staff that we have at Department of Housing and Community Affairs will follow up with you. We really cannot support just general statements. We need to know specifics. So the more specifics in your complaint, the better. But we will work with you if you believe your rent was raised at an amount that was not allowed, if you believe notices were not provided timely, if you have issues on your security deposit return after you move out, if you have concerns about the form and structure of your lease or your rights and any of these issues, the first response is to work with your landlord and to focus them on the landlord-tenant responsibilities, and then to file a complaint. So the county will respond, and we'll work with you, and we'll try and get the landlord and the tenant to understand all of the requirements, try to mediate it, or in the absence of mediation, to work toward resolving through enforcement action with our Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs. So you do have support.
Frank, a question came up that either one of us, I guess, could address, but what happens if a landlord decides not to renew a person's lease, waiting until after the May 15th? It's my understanding that they have the right to do that. What they cannot do is raise your rent and not give you a renewal, so to speak. They can't just raise your rent. We would believe that that is in fact a renewal, and we would argue that. But they cannot not give you a renewal notice or any notice at all. And if that happens, your rent will stay the same. And if it goes beyond the end of your lease, by state law, you go month to month. That happens automatically. But until they give you a renewal notice, your rent must stay the same. Anything else to that, Frank?
No, that's all correct. And it always requires 90 days before a rent increase. And that landlord cannot increase your rent more than once every 12 months.
Right.
So, and again, there's a lot of specific requirements. You spoke a little bit to not renewing your lease. If a landlord gives you notice that they are not renewing your lease and they give you 60 days to vacate the property, they do not have to give you a reason. They do not have to, they have no obligation to renew your lease. They can simply tell you that your lease is ending and that you are being given notice to vacate without describing any reason. You don't have to be late on your rent. If you're late on your rent, that doesn't matter. There's limited protections if it's considered to be a retribution
Tenant holding over. Yeah.
or some other action based on your action to protect your rights. But that's where legal counsel, legal assistance can step in. The other thing I want to add,
we're very interested in this issue of non-renewals. The 60-day notice, and if you stay one day beyond that, you're what's called tenant holding over, and the landlord can sue to evict you for tenant holding over. As Mr. Demaray said, they don't have to give you a reason. Some jurisdictions have laws called just cause protection laws that for decades that have always required a landlord to have to explain why they're not going to renew a lease in order to protect tenants from any types of abuse, from discrimination to pursuing your rights and being retaliated against in some way. But that does not exist in the state of Maryland. The Renters Alliance is fighting very hard for that. I can tell you that the county executive spoke, Mark Elrich spoke very strongly in favor of just cause eviction, as did the county council and the majority of the state delegation. And we believe the majority of the state delegation. There was one delegate who chairs the housing committee that opposed it, but we are working on that protection. But at the moment, it does not exist. So keep track of that. We are also interested we're hearing an uptick in tenant holding over filings and people receiving notices to vacate. If you think you've received a notice to vacate unfairly, please let us know. We'd like to not only follow up individually, but to have a sense of where these are coming from. If there's any nefarious strategy behind it, if there's a property management company or a landlord company that doesn't understand the law or is being abusive, we'd like to know so that we can inform policymakers, or if got a good case, to inform landlord tenant to help us and enforce the law.
So I want to just add a couple more pieces of support, and then there's some questions in the chat that I think we can touch on. But the county code, housing code, consistently we hear questions. Same process. If you have any issue in your property that you feel is outside of housing code, and at the Montgomery County DHCA webpage, there is a code handbook. I'll try and get that link in there as well. But the code handbook is actually interactive, supportive, helps you understand what items are included, what items are not. But if you have a health and safety issue, if you've got items that are not working in your property or in the building, the first action is to contact property management, landlord, focus on repair. Things break, things need repair. There's a process that most landlords have. If in working with your landlord, you are not getting things repaired and they are not responsive, and particularly if you have health and safety issues, we absolutely need to hear from you. Again, the 311 phone line, or you can do the complaint form online at the Montgomery County DHCA website. You need to file a complaint. We need to hear the specifics. If you've got specifically, health safety issues, we want to know about those as soon as possible. We want the prioritization. We have code inspectors. Again, we've got 130,000 properties. We have to prioritize, but we will prioritize, particularly health and safety. We will respond. We'll work with you and the landlord to identify the issue, determine, number one, is it in violation of county housing code requirements? And second, where is it in the process of being remedied? But the focus is to get that going as soon as possible. So we know there are issues, as always in buildings, no matter what their age, et cetera. But our staff, our responsibility is enforcement of county housing code law requirements. But we need to hear from them. We need,
Here's an interesting question for you, Frank. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not 100%. Can tenants, and Mr. Demaray also has dual responsibilities with common ownership communities at the moment. Can tenants who are residents in a condominium complex, but renting their condos individually, form tenants associations amongst themselves?
I see the question. Individuals are free to organize any, community activities, but the concept of representing themselves to a property management, the landlord for the individual condominium renter is the condominium owner. It is not the property management. It's not the
Yeah.
condominium association. So, people can talk amongst themselves, but the counterparty, the landlord, is not the condominium association or the property management company. It is the landlord that is renting the individual unit. So
This is a confusion that comes up a lot in common ownership communities when a tenant thinks that the board or the condominium association is managing their relationship to their property, and they're not. It's the relationship, as Mr. Desmarais said, to the landlord, the owner of the condominium, that is the primary relationship. And if there's an issue, it would require the owner of the condominium to bring it up with the board, not the tenant in those circumstances. I understand that.
One thing I do want to make sure we include this evening is support, financial support. The challenges that the entire economy, but specific segments of our economy and specific individuals have gone through with the COVID income losses and damage to financial situation. The federal government had responded with significant levels of support, and that continues. The county does have and has had a we called COVID rent relief for rent arrears for those tenants who could demonstrate both that they were low income and that they had income loss or income impact from COVID time period, COVID impacts. The previous phase was discontinued in December because we had a different funding source. We went through the previous funding source. The new funding source, the county does have an allocation of funds that will become available. They are not currently available. We don't have a specific date, and we don't have all the eligibility, but we are working to make these funds available for those who've had rent arrears, past due rent due to COVID impact. The best information about that is, again, if you go to that Montgomery County MD /renters, one of the immediate top links is COVID rent relief, or if you just put in Montgomery County, Maryland, COVID rent relief, it'll take you to the landing page. And right now, the action that we recommend is to register an inquiry. The first thing you'll see on that page is an inquiry button, name, contact information, phone, email address, so that when the program becomes available, you will get an alert. And so you can stay in touch with Renters Alliance, you can monitor the county's webpage, you can pay attention to media, but you will get a direct link, a direct update if you put your information in. It is not an application. It'll ask some basic information, but it is not an application. Don't stand by and wait. All we can say is when you do get a notice, it will direct you to the information available. And if you are eligible, you would then have an opportunity to apply. And this is the federal COVID rent relief that the county has been awarded. And we're working as fast as we can to get that information out. But at this stage, for those that have past due rent, they need assistance on, please, work through that system. If you are facing eviction, if you have a notice of eviction, if you've got what they call red and white notice, if your case went to court, whether you attended or not, and we strongly recommend everyone to attend when they have a court date. If you have a judgment against you and the landlord gets a called writ of possession, where they can ask the sheriff's office to vacate the property, meaning come and evict you, you'll get a notice pasted on your door. You will get notices in the mail. If you get to a judgment, the county has specific resources we call housing stabilization support. We can help with emergency money if it might be sufficient to help you work with your landlord to maintain your housing, but it could also be to help you relocate. It can help you with moving, storage, potentially first month and security deposit. The county is absolutely focused on households, people not becoming homeless and we have a range of services. So, you cannot count on receiving enough back rent to cover all your past due rent. But if you face that notice, and we are facing people being evicted in the county, we do have support. And as soon as you think you have that happening, if you have a judgment against you in court, even if you don't have the final notice, call 311, ask for housing stabilization services. It's a program administered through the Department of Health and Human Services. They have case managers, they have specific resources to learn about your situation, determine what you're eligible for, help you connect with the support to help you avoid becoming homeless if it's not sufficient to help you maintain your current housing. So we absolutely recommend people if you're concerned, scared, etc., legal assistance to know where you are in the process and what's going on, what your rights are. But if you get to the end of the process and you're facing loss of housing, please act as early as possible so that you're not faced with same-day eviction struggle trying to find someplace to relocate to. We can help you in advance of that date. So I'll pause there for Matt.
Good. Thank you. A quick question. I believe I have the answer to this, is that if a landlord cannot charge, in addition to a 0.4% rent increase during the rent stabilization period, a month-to-month fee. I believe that, but they could charge a month-to-month fee if in total it doesn't come above 0.4%. Can you address that, Frank? Do we know?
Yeah, fees are considered part, if they're required, okay, they're part of the monthly required payment, and so cannot exceed that. I saw the note in there about utility system called RUBS. It gets a little complicated. I'm not going to try and answer here or in the chat. If you're facing a lease that's changing in the new lease from tenant paid to metered and shared percentage, which is what the RUBS structure represents. You can find more information again specifically in our landlord tenant handbook. There's a fairly significant discussion of the RUBS, but during this cap on increases, any additional required payment over and above the stated rent has to operate within that maximum. But again, that's only in place for the next 2 weeks.
Right. After May 15th, all bets are off, and we could see increases and month-to-month lease fees that it can be exorbitant, often designed to get you to sign a 1 or 2 year lease. So that is the way it is until May 15th. I just want to point out Malek, who's hiding, but I have my I'm a renter and I vote button. If you want one, that's your chance to show it off. Malek, what happened to it? Oh, it's gone. Well, anyway, we have a lot of them, and we're going to get more of them. So if you want for you or your building, you want some of these buttons to show off that you're a renter and you vote, email us with your address, obviously, at info@rentersalliance.org. We've got some now. We're going to get more soon, but we want to make sure that we're demonstrating to our community and every elected official and every candidate for office that renters are being active. So I want to again thank Dr. Zelaya, who's off to the next meeting, for his expertise. I want to encourage anybody who has any questions, concerns, you're free to contact us at info@rentersalliance.org. I want to thank my staff, obviously, Pat Beckham and Malek Demir paying attention, and my fellow board member, Josh Fisher, and of course, our Deputy Director for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, Frank Demarais. It's 8:30. We start on time and we end on time. So thanks, everybody, and good night.